welcome everyone. My name is Joey Pelletier, and this is my 2021 In The Bag. And this is a special In The Bag because for the 2021 season, I will be trying to throw a 100% mixed bag. So what that means is every disc in my bag is made by a different manufacturer. So 17 different molds, 17 different manufacturers. Hopefully as we go through this, I'll introduce you to some manufacturers and some discs that you've never heard of before and might want to try out for yourselves. So let's get into it. As I go through this, I'll be going from my slower discs to my faster discs, and within discs of the same type, from more overstable to more understable, which generally correlates to less distance to more distance. And we'll start with my putting putters. If you watched my In The Bag from 2020, you'll recognize these. These are my putting putters. They are Discraft Fierces. These are the signature putter of Paige Pierce. And I really like these because of how thin or how low profile they are and how understable they are. I like throwing understable putters because I feel like I can just aim dead center pole and it's not going to deviate off that line too much, even outside circle one. So that's just a preference that I have. If you're looking for understable putters and you're looking for a really low profile putter, the Fierce is a really, really great option. The only thing that I don't like about the Fierce is how pricey they tend to be. So for that reason, I am considering other options going into future years, but for now, I still got these in the bag. They still fly great. They're definitely not like too beat in or anything. So my plan is to use these for the rest of 2021. Next up, for my first throwing putter, I said I was going to start more overstable first, but this is in the top shelf of my bag, so I'll just get this one out of the way. This is a RPM Discs 2E in that beautiful bird stamp there. RPM Discs is based out of New Zealand, and this is the first disc that I've ever thrown by RPM Discs. And I haven't thrown this one a whole lot either. I only just got this 2 days ago. So I was able to play around with it a couple days ago when I first got it, and it really is very understable. This is the kind of disc that even for distances of like 200 feet, I can throw this flat at like 60% power, and it's gonna turn even over those short distances. So really, really fun disc to throw. I love throwing understable putters, and this one really, really is awesome. Especially so because of how much glide this disc has. And honestly, putters or otherwise, this might be one of the glidiest discs I've ever thrown. It's really, really cool to be able to throw this at like half power, maybe 50-60%, and it just goes straight for so long and never wants to fade out. So very fun disc. If you're new to RPM discs, the 2E is a great place to start. This is in their baseline plastic, which is called Strata. It's pretty stiff, not quite as stiff as like a DX plastic, and it's definitely softer than a DX plastic as well. So it's already showing some dings and wear and tear, even though I've only had this disc for a couple days. So I'm pretty confident this will beat into something that's really flippy, which is really what I'm looking forward to. Now we'll go back to overstable. So this is my Prodigy Discs A1 in their 400 plastic. And if I had never thrown this disc before, I would not know that a putter exists that's this overstable. Usually when I'm throwing this, it's for forehand approaches or full power shots off the tee. When I'm throwing this at full power, I'm really only getting maybe 220 to 230 feet. And that's, throwing it as hard as I can, dead flat on the forehand. This thing can handle all the torque that I can give it and really just fades very, very hard. It's kind of hard to believe that putters can be this overstable until you actually throw and see for yourself. I was playing a bag swap round with my buddy Austin the other day, and he got to throw this, and the first time that he threw this, immediately just remarked at how overstable it was. And he's used to throwing zones, so zones are not the most overstable approach discs, but they're definitely overstable, you know. And coming from a background of throwing zones as your approach discs, and harps as well, I think he bags as well, this disc is just another step up completely. So if you're looking for something that's that overstable, maybe you're just looking for a disc that's a slower disc that you can just rip on a forehand and know it's not going to turn over, this is that disc for sure. Notably less overstable than that, we have the Viking Discs Rune. This is in their Storm plastic. Beautiful owl stamp there with the Infinite Discs logo in the middle. Really like the flight of this disc. It's a disc that I can throw flat and hard, and it's not going to turn, and it will fade a decent amount. The flight numbers on this are 2400, but in this premium plastic and still pretty fresh out of the box, it's definitely going to fade. I'd put it maybe at like a 2 fade in this premium plastic. There is a pretty notable bead on that rim there, and for a throwing putter I really don't mind the bead. What might turn more people off to this disc is how how domey it is. So I'll try to show you the dome there. Really is very domey. You might be able to hear the pop top there. So I don't notice it too much because when I throw backhands, my thumb tends to be right over the rim. I don't notice the dominess too much. But if you have a more traditional grip where your thumb is more on the flight plate, you might pick up on that a bit more. Really, where I notice it is with my 2 fingers in the modified fan grip holding up the flight plate from the bottom. So if you don't know if you're into that kind of thing, maybe this isn't the disc for you, but having a 2-speed disc that is that slow but that you can just rip on and know that's not going to turn over is really nice. So I like having this in the bag. I like that it doesn't fade as much as that A1 and gets a bit more distance too. So where the A1, I'm really not throwing more than 220, and on the backhands, really it's more like 200. This is one that I can push more into that 240 type range, which definitely gives it its own slot in the bag. So good disc right here. Next up is the MVP Atom. This is in their Proton plastic. If you watched my In the Bag last year, I said that this was my favorite disc in the bag. This year, I have a new favorite disc in the bag, taking the throne from the Atom, but don't be mistaken, this disc is still really, really great. As far as putters go, it's very glidey, so I can push this out further than any other putter I've ever thrown. Typically with a putter, I'm not expecting to get more than like 240 to 250, but I can push this out to probably 275 and just dead straight. I'll throw this hard and flat and it'll go straight basically the whole way. It usually will show a little bit of fade at the end, but really just point and shoot, holds any line you put it on. Really durable plastic. Really can't say enough about the Atom. If you're new to MVP stuff, just looking to try them out, I would highly recommend the Atom. Great disc. Next up, this is a VIP harp from Westside Discs, and if you look closely, you'll notice a lot of ink on the flight plate there. That is because this is an ace disc. I hit my first ace with this actually just 2 days ago. And as is tradition, usually anyone who witnesses an ace will sign the disc. So I've got a couple on there. Shout out to my friends Pat and Steven, who are the signatures on this one for my first ace. And Steven got pretty lucky because that was the first round of disc golf that he'd ever played. And he already got to witness an ace, which is pretty cool. So as far as the flight, I'm almost always throwing this forehand. This isn't really a disc that I'll throw backhand that often. On the forehands, I like this disc because, for one, it's nice and flat and feels really nice in the forehand grip. And it's a disc that I can throw hard and flat on the forehands, and it's really just dead straight. And I've never really thrown a disc quite like that. Usually discs that are overstable enough to be thrown flat and not turn will have pretty significant fade. And this really isn't that. So I'll also say that I didn't buy this disc brand new. This was a disc that my buddy Tristan found in the water at Vista del Camino. I don't know how long it was down there. I can't imagine it was very long because at Vista there are a lot of people who fish discs out of the water and sell them. So I really don't think it was in the water that long, but it's possible that it was. And so I don't know exactly how the flight of this compares to one that was brand new. And even disregarding that it was in the water, obviously this belonged to someone before that, and I don't remember exactly how much wear and tear it had on it. So I don't exactly know what a brand new harp would fly like, but this one is really, really straight on the forehand, which is really, really cool and makes it very, very useful. So really like having this disc in the bag. Also very overstable, just a tick up in speed and distance for me, is the Legacy Discs Recluse. And this is in their Pinnacle plastic. And it's got this beautiful Happy Halloween stamp on there. Shout out to Stephen Miller, who I picked up this disc from. This disc is really nice. This is, again, basically a forehand-only disc for me. It does have a pretty notable bead on the rim there, but for the forehands I really can't even tell. Nice and flat. The Pinnacle plastic is very nice, very premium stuff. Feels a lot like Innova Champion plastic. Because it's nice and flat, I really like how it feels in the forehand grip, and this, again, is just one of those discs that you can crank on hard and flat with a forehand. It'll handle all the torque that you can give it and fade pretty significantly. So, comparable to a Buzz OS, which I've thrown in the past, but I would say this might even be a little bit more overstable than that. Not too much, it's definitely very comparable. So if you've thrown the Buzz OS, for example, the flight's very similar, the hand feel is very similar, but can't go wrong with this plastic, with obviously the sweet stamp. Really good option from Legacy Discs if you're looking for a pretty overstable mid-range. This is a good option. Alright, next up, very cool disc here. This is a Duke, which is manufactured by Disc Golf UK. I hadn't heard of this brand until very recently, and Infinite Discs on their website has been doing a series of blogs called the Manufacturer Spotlight. And in their article about Disc Golf UK and their sister company called Launch Disc Golf, they were asking people to comment on the article saying what disc from Disc Golf UK or Launch Disc Golf they would like to try. And 33 people or so commented. I think they picked maybe 2 or 3 people to win and actually ship them the disc that they commented with. And so I was fortunate enough to be one of the winners, and they sent me this Duke. So the Duke is an overstable mid-range. I believe they list it at a 6-speed, so it definitely does have some separation in the bag from the Legacy Recluse that I was just talking about. What really stands out to me about this disc is the rim. And look at the angle of that rim. It's basically a 90-degree angle. Really crazy. I mean, it looks like a muffin top. Look at that. Really, really bizarre. I've never thrown a disc with a rim that's comparable to this at all. So I will be honest, in the backhand grip, feels a little odd. It's definitely very different, but the flight of this disc is really nice. If you're familiar with discs and that looks very overstable to you, I can tell you it is. I believe they listed at 6403.5. And I just got this disc today, threw it out in the field, and I think those numbers are pretty spot on. This is a pretty baseline plastic. I don't remember the name of the plastic, but I think this is going to beat in relatively quickly and get into something that holds straight for a little bit longer, but honestly, it's so overstable, I don't think it's really ever going to be like a straight flying disc. It is really nice. The plastic is really nice. I like that it's kind of soft, but still pretty stiff. The forehand grip feels a little bit better, still definitely unconventional, but I've noticed that you can put a little bit of hyzer on it, it'll flip up to flat, carry pretty straight and not really turn, and finish pretty hard. And I'm liking the distance that I'm getting with this, given how overstable it is, because it's definitely very overstable, but it's fast enough that it will pick up some distance for you before it hits the ground. So definitely gets more distance than the Recluse, being a little bit faster, which helps give it its own spot in the bag. So very happy with this disc. It's really nice. If you're looking for something that's that overstable, I think the Duke is a good option to try out. And I know I've gotten all this way so far and haven't mentioned Innova, and that'll come to an end here. So this is a Innova Panther in the Champion plastic. This is pink, so it is my pink Panther. And I got this disc hoping that it would be understable. The flight numbers definitely suggest that it should be understable, but it's still pretty new, and it's in Champion plastic, which is one of the most overstable plastics on the market and one of the most durable. So it's definitely not understable right now. Really, this disc, if I throw it hard and flat, it's just going to be laser straight. So that's nice, because if I want it to be understable and finish to the right, I can just put a little anhyzer on it, it'll go to the right. If I need something to hyzer and get a little bit more distance, this is definitely a disc I could use. Now that I have the Duke, I'll probably just stick to using this. But I could accomplish the same type of line with the Panther. It's just pretty neutrally stable and will hold any line you put it on. And it's nice because it definitely feels like an understable disc with the rim. It's really just how new it is and the plastic that's making it fly more stable. So I like the feel of understable discs in general better than discs that are more stable. So I really like how nice this feels while not necessarily being super understable. So really cool disc. Looking forward to having this in the bag for 2021. And just a bit more understable than the Champion Panther, we have the Infinite Discs Chariot. And this is in the Glow Sea Blend plastic. This is definitely more gummy than Champion plastic. Champion plastic is very stiff, and the Sea Blend plastic generally is supposed to be Infinite's version of Champion, but I guess maybe this Glow Sea Blend is just different enough that it's very gummy compared to traditional Champion plastic or Sea Line plastic. This disc for me, when I throw it hard and flat, it'll definitely turn pretty substantially, but it never really turns to a very severe angle. So as it turns, it really is just kind of translating to the right for me when I throw backhand, and then when it gets to the point of fading, it tends to fade back to center. So really like that about this disc, in that it's something that's understable but really doesn't turn over and pick up a lot of angle, because discs that do that can hold that angle all the way to the ground and turn into cut rollers. And this disc really doesn't ever pick up enough angle to do that, but it is definitely understable. So it's definitely an understable disc that I can throw and have confidence that it's not going to cut roll, which is really nice, because typically understable discs are very touchy. and you have to hit the angles just right to really maximize your distance out of them. And this is a disc for the most part that I don't have to worry about that with. So very, very confident in hitting the course with the Chariot. Good disc. Alright, so I mentioned that the Duke was brand new to me as of today, and today was the first day I've ever thrown it. And this disc is in that same boat. So came in the same package. This is a Divergent Discs Kraken in their Max Grip plastic, I believe is what it's called. And Divergent Discs is very new to the scene. I think this disc and 2 other molds by them are the first 3 discs that they've put out, and I think they were PDGA approved like earlier this year in 2021. At the time of recording, today is February 1st. So this disc is very new. It's more likely that this was PDGA approved in like the December timeframe, but still very new, only a couple months old since being PDGA approved. And when I heard the name Max Grip for the plastic, typically I think of grippier discs as being more baseline plastics, which implies that they're going to beat in very quickly and change flight characteristics very quickly. But the ratings that this had on the Infinite Discs website were very high for both grip and durability, which is not necessarily that common. And it was being compared to Castoplast's K1 plastic, which, if you've thrown a lot of discs and you've been around the game for long enough, you may know that Castoplast K1 plastic is widely regarded as one of the best plastics on the market because of how durable yet grippy that plastic is. And so I was very excited to try this disc out. And as soon as you feel this disc, the plastic just screams durability. I mean, this is super, super tough plastic. It is a little bit gummy, but the plastic is just very, very premium stuff and very grippy. The review they gave this is really spot on. Really impressed with how the plastic feels, and really impressed with the flight. I mean, again, today was the first time I got to throw it, but throwing it hard and flat, it'll really turn the entire flight, but it's one of those discs that's really not at risk of cut rolling, at least at the amount of power that I can give it, which is really nice just to watch it really hold that gentle fade the whole way. If I start this on a little bit of hyzer, then it will tend to flip up to flat and then turn a little bit but finish back to straight. So this is going to be a very workable disc for me. If I need it to turn but fight out of it, I think I'll be able to do that. If I want it to just turn and finish as far right as possible, I have confidence I'll be able to do that. Really great disc. They list this at a 6-speed, and I was putting this basically as far as my fairway drivers, which tend to be my max distance discs. So really speaks to how much glide it has as well. Just super impressed. Really, really impressed by the by the Divergent Discs Kraken. I'm sure most of you watching this, if you're watching it any time around the time where I actually publish this video, you probably have not thrown Divergent yet because of how new they are, but you really, really have to. This stuff is really, really great plastic. Next up, I'll try to pick up the pace a little bit here. This is a C-Line FD from Discmania. And this is kind of interesting because I watched my video, my In The Bag video from last year, and in that video I talked about being able to get a little bit of turn out of this and then have it quickly fight out. And I think either I'm not throwing with as much velocity as I did last year, or my natural release point just has a little bit more hyzer than it did, because I'm usually not really getting this just to show a lot of turn out on the course. I had that in my head today when I was out at the field, and really tried to focus on throwing it flat or maybe with a little bit of anhyzer to see if I really can squeeze any turn out of this. And you can if you hit it really flat or maybe just a little bit of anhyzer. But for the most part, if you're not getting your release angle up to flat, it's not going to turn. So I think that really just speaks to the C-line plastic making it a little bit more overstable than the numbers would suggest. If I had to put numbers on this disc specifically, I'd put it more maybe comparable to a Latitude 64 Explorer in that 7502 type range. Regardless though, really great disc, goes straight for a really long time before it fades out pretty dependably for me. Typically pushing distances of like 320 or so for me. So really great disc, C-Line FD. Very popular mold from Discmania, so if you haven't thrown one, definitely worth a shot. Alright, lesser known manufacturer here. This is an Abyss, which is made by Storm Disc Golf. I always hesitate on that because the plastic of this is called Storm, and the manufacturer of this is called Storm, so I always feel like I'm going to mess that one up. But nope, this is Storm Disc Golf. This is in their Category 2 plastic, which I think right now is the only plastic that this disc is available in. Storm Disc Golf discs are manufactured by Gateway, and honestly, this plastic blend, I'm not sure what this plastic would be called if it were on a Gateway mold. But the most comparable plastic that I can think of is Innova Pro plastic. It's definitely a softer plastic. Kind of feels almost chalky in a sense. It's definitely not the most durable. It's definitely got some wear and tear on it, and it definitely doesn't fly the same as it did when I first got it. But this disc is the best feeling disc in the hand for the forehand grip that I've ever thrown. Basically board flat. It has a little bit of rise at the rim and then gets pretty flat for the rest of the flight plate. Feels super, super comfortable. The rim size, this is an 8-speed, so it's right in the middle of that fairway driver class of disc, which is really in that range that I prefer for throwing forehands especially. Just the plastic is also pretty soft, so I really can feel like I'm getting a really good grip on this. And again, the feel in the hand on this disc is just the best feel for a forehand disc I've ever thrown. As far as the stability, it's more on the overstable side. The numbers out of the box are 8403. This one's a little bit more beat up, so it's not quite that overstable. But when I'm throwing this, it's basically 100% of the time it's on a forehand. Put a little bit of hyzer on it, it'll flip up to flat and go straight for a really long way, and then show pretty appreciable fade. So really great disc. When this was brand new, it definitely, I could throw it basically flat and not see a whole lot of turn out of it. Now it's at the point where if I throw it flat, it'll probably turn quite a bit, and it'll probably try to fade back a little bit at the end, but probably not a whole lot. Not really at the point anymore where it fights a headwind super well, but the stability on the disc, just as far as being able to put a little bit of hyzer on it, which is really my more comfortable release point, letting it flip up the flat, get a ton of distance, but still get a ton of fade, is super, super nice. If you've never thrown a disc from Storm Disc Golf, I cannot recommend this disc anymore. It is really my favorite disc in the bag, and this is what has unseated the Atom for me. It's my favorite disc, so definitely recommend trying this out. Sweet stamp too. Awesome. Alright, understable fairway. So this is a Yikun is the manufacturer. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the mold is the Gao. That's what it is. And it's in their Dragon Line plastic. The Dragon Line plastic feels most similar to Latitude 64 Gold Line plastic. And Gold Line plastic is really some of my favorite stuff on the market. Really, really great plastic. Definitely soft and gummy, which makes it really grippy, but definitely very premium stuff as well. This is a disc that I'll never throw this forehand, it's just way too unstable. On the backhand, this will be a disc that I can put on pretty appreciable hyzer, and it'll flip all the way up to flat and turn over, and honestly it might not even come back. That's just how unstable it is, which is really nice because out here in Tucson, we'll have a lot of holes where you've got just a bunch of really short trees in front of you, for instance, and it really gives you two options. You can go with the overhand shot, or you can try to go with a big sky anhyzer over the top. And this is the disc that I would use for that type of line. This is also a disc I'd use for rollers. I don't throw a whole lot of rollers, but if I had to try to lay one down, this is definitely the disc that I would do it with. So, very cool offering from Yi Kun Disc Golf. Definitely one that I would check out. Alright, 3 more molds, I believe. This really is my workhorse driver. This is the Latitude 64 Musket in the Opto Plastic. Picked this up at Spinners on the Green by Vista del Camino Disc Golf Course. This is a 10-speed fairway driver from Latitude. This is a disc for me that when I throw it hard and flat, it's usually going to turn a little bit for me, but definitely no risk of this turning over, and it'll fade back a little bit. It's not a super hard fade, which is nice because I think it maximizes its time in the air and maximizes the distance output for me. And speaking of maximizing distance output, this is the disc that I go to if I'm just trying to throw a forehand as far as possible. Again, it's not super fast. We're not talking like 12, 13, 14 speed. It's got that 10-speed rim, which is very comfortable for the forehand. It's not super flat, to be honest, and usually I prefer flatter discs for my forehand grip, but it doesn't really bother me too much. It's not super domey, you know. Very comfortable. And this is a disc that if I'm just trying to unload a forehand, I'll put it on a pretty appreciable amount of hyzer. It'll flip up, hold a turn for quite a ways, and then fight back for that max distance S-line that we're all looking for in our flight paths. Really, really great disc. Very impressed with how durable the Opto Plastic is. Like I said, this is just a workhorse for me out on the fairways. If you're looking for something like that, comparable to like an Undertaker or maybe a beat up Star Thunderbird maybe, very good offering here that's comparable in that slot. Alright, so going from 10-speed discs all the way up to 13-speed, this is my overstable max distance driver, and it is the Dynamic Discs Defender. This is the Page Pierce Defender in the Biofusion plastic. The Biofusion plastic's really nice. It's definitely very gummy, but also a little bit slick, which is kind of interesting. And the forehand grip feels really nice. Again, it's got a little bit of a dome to it, but I wouldn't really consider it domey. Feels good in the forehand grip. This disc is really interesting because what I've found sometimes with discs is that on backhands, they'll behave with a certain level of stability, and then with forehands, they'll behave noticeably less stable. Just with how they are handling torque, they just don't handle torque forehand the same way as they do backhand. This disc flies identically for me whether I'm throwing it backhand or forehand. Either way, if I'm throwing it hard and flat, it'll ride dead straight for a really long time and then fade really hard, which is really nice to find a disc that's that overstable and that trustworthy, but still accrues you a lot of distance before it fades out. So the numbers on this are 13503, and I'm here to tell you that that 5 glide really is legit. I mean, this thing glides for days, but is also not very overstable, but it's definitely overstable. Overstable enough for sure to handle forehands up to like 350 feet or so. That's not really how far I will throw this disc. Typically, I'll throw this either flat or with a little bit of hyzer just to make sure it doesn't turn. And it'll go straight for a really long time and then fade out, usually around like the 320 point. And like I said, it's a disc that I can throw equally far backhand, which is not something I can often say of a disc that's this fast and this overstable. So, really awesome disc, really valuable find, really like the Biofusion plastic. If you're a fan of dynamic discs, then I'm sure you've thrown this disc before, but otherwise, definitely one of the better dynamic discs that I've thrown, which is saying a lot because I've thrown Lucid Escapes. That's like one of my favorite discs of all time. I've thrown the Lucid X Getaway, the Page Shoe signature version, also a really good disc. But this might be my favorite dynamic product yet, so really good. And lastly, I mentioned that Castoplast K1 plastic earlier, and this is the Castoplast disc that I'm bagging in my 100% mixed bag. So this is a 14-speed, very overstable disc called the Rask. Again, by Castoplast, it's in their K1 plastic. So the Rask is pretty interesting because it has a second rim, and you can see it right here. They claim that it makes it more overstable, and from throwing this, I definitely believe that. This thing is the most overstable disc I've ever thrown, without question. This is going to be a disc that's comparable to like the Infinite Discs Concrete Slab or the Innova Max. Just one of those discs that's really, really fast and really, really overstable. This is a disc in that slot. Now, up to this point, for the entirety of 2020, I was throwing this K1 Lots, which is a fairway driver from Castoplast, and it was really, really hard for me to take that disc out of the bag, but at the end of the day, I can do everything with the musket that I could do with the Lots, and really even the more important factor was that there's just not another disc I've ever thrown that skips like this disc. That's really what I'm using this for. So if I have a disc, if I have a shot that needs to go really far to the right, but maybe there are some trees or some foliage that's blocking a more traditional forehand line, and I need to go under and kind of skip out there, this is the disc that I'm going to reach for. It's just so overstable and so fast and so low profile, which is kind of weird for an overstable disc, that it just skips like no other disc I've ever seen. And in the K1 plastic, it's durable enough that it can withstand all of that skipping. And out here in Tucson, not a whole lot of grass, so when it's skipping on like sand and rocks and stuff. So definitely not as overstable as it was on day one, but even still, just really, really overstable. The inner rim makes it feel really comfortable in the forehand grip. My middle finger just fits right in there nice and snug, and it's really comfortable. So again, just never thrown a disc that's as much of a utility disc as this disc. Just skips like crazy, unlike anything else I've ever seen, and really, truly irreplaceable, which is shown by the fact that I had to take my trusty Lots out of the bag if I want to keep my bag 100% mixed. So there it is, Castoplast Rask, and that finishes off the bag for 2021. Now, as the season goes on, I'm expecting, I might lose a disc or two every so often, but I will try to keep it 100% mixed as often as I can. And, if there are enough changes in the middle of the year, I might post a mid-year update. But for the most part, I think I'll just see you guys in 2022. So check back in then.